All right. Welcome on to Around the Coin, Andreas Fletcher, who is the product manager at Trustlines Network. Andreas, welcome to Around the Coin. I'd love to learn a bit more about your personal background, how you got into blockchain space, and what you guys are up to now.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled. I'm happy to be here, talk about trust lines, talk about what we're doing in the space. So, personal background. 2013, my dad called me and said, Andreas, do you know about Bitcoin? And back then I was a student. I worked at the Deutsche Börse, German stock exchange, which is the biggest stock exchange in Europe, as a working student. And I told him I don't know anything about Bitcoin. And he said, well, it's really easy. You let your computer do math and you get money for it. And I was like, that's awesome. I like money. I'm a student. I need money. Yeah. So I set up whatever needed to be set up on my laptop. And I had no idea about anything back then. And I started mining. Yeah. And I went into the kitchen, got a coffee, went back, and my laptop was smoking. Yeah. And basically the mining killed my graphic card. Yeah. So rather than, getting money, I had to spend money to buy a new laptop. And the first thing I did as it arrived was, what is Bitcoin? And so 2013, I started to look into Bitcoin. I was very impressed about it. I had no idea about the technology that it used, so I read it a lot. And back then, there was like nothing that you could read. There was like the white paper, and then there was Reddit, and that's pretty much it back then. Nowadays, it's so much easier to get into crypto. And basically, the idea of Bitcoin, I found it so interesting that I started to think about ideas what you could build on Bitcoin. And since I was working at a stock exchange, I suggested, why don't we just build a Bitcoin derivative? And back then, Bitcoin wasn't known too much in corporates. So what actually happened was that I changed from my working student position to also an advisor position for the German Stock Exchange, and like guided for 4 to 5 years the stock exchange in regards to cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies, getting more people involved and getting a boss that then also looked into the topic and did research. And then he had a very technology background, so he also understood it very quickly. And then we did several prototypes on how you can combine cryptocurrency, blockchain, DLT with traditional finance. Yeah, so like stocks. We did research projects with the central banks together to see how you can more efficiently do delivery versus payments on a blockchain. But overall, I got to a point where I said, I don't like how corporates look at blockchain. I saw the value of blockchain being something that challenges businesses. And this is not directly towards my old employee, but that's overall the general ecosystem in the financial industry. They tend to use what actually is like a tool of freedom, and they change it to fit into their scope, into their centralized model. And I didn't like that. I wanted to go into the space of, bringing the tools of financial freedom to people. And that's where I joined Brainbot Technologies, which has been in the Ethereum space since 2013, 14, working on Ethereum. And we have a project here called the Trustlines Network, which we gave to the Trustlines Foundation. We gave all the trademarks, we gave all the code over to that because we wanted to this project to be driven by a nonprofit rather than by a profit company. And yeah, I've been working on Trustlines since 2018 now.
Give me the quick. Not doesn't necessarily have to be quick, but tell me what Trustlines is trying to accomplish in the world.
Yes. So in general, what Trustlines is trying to accomplish, the vision is around financial inclusion. Yeah. So we have 1.7 unbanked people, and the traditional finance system is either unable or unwilling to bank these people, to provide them with the tools to get credit and to do payments. And Trustlines aims to fulfill this vision by having basically the mission of empowering these people to create their own money and allow them payments and access to credit. But it does that completely different than the traditional finance system, and it does it completely different than cryptocurrencies. Yeah. And
yeah, go on. Tell me more.
okay,
Yeah.
go.
So the traditional, just to preface that though, I would suppose that like at this point, traditional way of creating cryptocurrencies, there's an ICO, initial coin offering, where a bulk number, and that can be distributed, disseminated many different ways, but a bulk number of coins are issued out there, so you get the initial currency flowing, and that would be different from what you guys are doing. How did you, I guess, were you part of the early days kind of brainstorming the architecture and infrastructure design, or did you come on a little later?
I came on later when everything was scoped out already. I took over the project management role. The concept was already designed, and the concept itself is very, very, very old. It's not designed by us independently. If you look into money history, the concept of different types of money have been around since lots of years. Yeah, and the current traditional finance system is based on debt-based money. Yeah, so you have central bank money, you have commercial bank money, and all this money is some representation of a debt. If you have money in your bank account, it's basically the bank saying, "I owe you this money." If you have if you have a bill in your hand, it's basically the debt that the government ensures that you will get a service with this money. Yeah. So any money that is currently in circulation is mostly debt based. Yeah? There's no like commodity value backed by it. Yeah. Like many years we had this gold backed money where every dollar was backed by X amount of the same value in gold, but we like went away of that standard a long time ago because there's just not enough gold laying around for us to do.
The problem, right, is like the problem is that there's money is a way of keeping track of value, whereas if you're actually trading the thing of value, like silver coins or gold coins, there's just not enough of it in its form.
Yeah. So like in categories of money, we have central bank money, we have commercial bank money, central bank money being issued by central banks, which is also the only actual legal tender. Then we have the commercial bank money, which does not actually represent legal tender, but it more represents that a bank owes you money, and if you go to the bank, they will give you money. For Germany, for example, you only have this promise up to 100,000 euros. If you have 100,000 euros, you know that this money is like safe, and you know that if the bank defaults, you will get this money back because it's also covered by what the state promises you. If you have more than 100,000 in your bank account, could be that you don't get it. Yeah. If you go to the bank and say, I want 20 euros in cash, they'll give you the 20 euros, and then I can use this central bank money now to buy groceries or do whatever I want with it. And then we have commodity-based money, which is I see Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general as commodity-based money because there's some like to get Bitcoins, you have to invest power. The same for Ether. It's a type of commodity-based money. And what we're introducing is a people-powered money. So money generated by the people themselves that you can use to pay people that accept it. Yeah, that's basically the idea behind the Trustlines project. We want to empower people to create their own money so that they can rely on the tools that they need to generate the value from themselves rather than depending on other systems or other entities.
So go on with that. So it's a people-powered money system.
Yes.
How does that come about? How does that look like in practice?
Okay, so the concept that Trustlines relies on is a combination of mutual credit systems. So mutual credit systems are basically it's a system where people give themselves credit lines to other people, and they pay with IOUs. So, for example, if I would give you a credit line, you would give me a credit line, and we both say the credit line is up to 100 euro. Anything that I need to buy from you, I can pay in debt. I'll just say, I owe you this money. I don't have to give you cash. I'll just tell you, I give you that money as an IOU. And mutual credit is basically if you have a system around this where you have a mesh network or a star-shaped network where multiple people can interact with each other and pay with this money that is based on debt and credit. What we do is we take the blockchain aspect into it because, cryptocurrencies have been proving to be good, yeah? But blockchain, the technology itself, has been proven to be better because it has a lot of security in place that helps to build an attack-resistant infrastructure that is not governed by a central authority. And that, like a lot of years, that's the core aspect of a blockchain for me. You have an infrastructure where you do not depend on a trusted third party to ensure the safety and the finality of whatever is being done on it. Not the tokens on it. You still need somebody to guarantee the value of that. For example, if you do an ICO, you have to have the project behind that. You have to trust the project that they'll do a good job, that the token increases of value. But people don't need to trust the blockchain itself because the blockchain works in a decentralized way, and you have multiple actors out there that can take any role that they want to, and that just has a very good security feature around this. And so if you combine the concept of mutual credit and the step-based money, combine it with blockchain technology, you get a technology and a tool set that empowers people to create their own money in a very secure way, especially for countries that have problems with their government, like for trying to forbid these kind of currencies. You can't really stop those types of currencies if they're built on blockchain technology.
And that would that be different though? Say in the example of a very unstable government where the currency is being manipulated, maybe by a corrupt government, they could use Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency in the same way to get around that. Do you see the primary value of Trustlines being more so the credit and debiting system, or is it more the ability to create the currency itself? Because to me, it seems like the money piece is somewhat solved in cryptocurrency. Anyone can access it if they have an exchange and an ability to get online.
Yeah, exactly. But can they actually really, is cryptocurrency really inclusive? Like, if you want to buy cryptocurrency, what do? You go to a centralized exchange,
right?
You do KYC, you do AML, you give them a copy of your passport. You have to transfer fiat money to the exchange, and then you can buy, and then you can buy it. Yeah. So, even though we have the traditional finance that is very restricted in who's able to enter it, you have the crypto space that emerged through Bitcoin, providing an alternative to the system, but it still has in the entry barrier, it has the same challenges that the traditional finance has, because, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, you have to I don't know if you have to, but consumer protection is important. And I'm not saying that this whole KYC process around cryptocurrencies is a bad thing, but you have them. So for anybody that, wants to use cryptocurrencies to be financial independent, you have an entry point or you have an exit point at some point that, conflicts with the real world, and the real world. In the real world, you have to provide some verification that you're legal, either through KYC or a different way. And so it's not truly inclusive, especially if you look into countries that have a huge problem in terms of monetary design. You basically go to them and say, stop being poor, buy cryptocurrency. These people don't have money. They don't have money to buy cryptocurrency. Right. And so,
got it. Okay. So assuming, I mean, not even the assumption, the reality is if I want to buy Bitcoin, I have to start with US, in my case, I'm in the US. So I have to start with US dollars inside of a US bank, which I then have to wire to an exchange and then go through AML, KYC. Maybe there's an approval process, and then buy it. So
exactly.
There's a number of steps involved there. Other on-ramps include I could trade it. I could do a local Bitcoins or Paxful deal where I could start with cash in my hand. I can go in a store, buy a gift card, trade a gift card to get on. There's actually a company I started and worked on for a few years called Redeem that did this in particular. So I'm familiar with this problem, which in like you say, in many parts of the world, it's a huge issue that doesn't get appreciated by people in the West. Like I'm sure in Germany and here in the US, it's just like banks are like water. You can just quite easily get a bank account, unless you can't get a bank account, and then you can't get a bank account anywhere. So, but for you guys, how would it work if I'm a person in a country with a corrupt government, or I just can't get into the banking system for one reason or the other? What is my step-by-step to get involved and start finding value out of the trust lines?
Okay, yeah. So just quickly before we go into step by step, just some core definitions of trust line. So a trust line is basically a bidirectional credit line that two people issue themselves. Like I already mentioned, if I give you a credit line of 100, you give me a credit line of 100, that's good. The value of this credit line could be anything. It could be euros, it could be dollars, it could be hours, it could be beer, for example. Yeah, it could be a favor. It doesn't really matter what it is. It depends on what you want to use it for. If you want to use it for payment in the real world, where you buy goods and services, it should be a stable currency. For example, dollars or euros. Or the other stable currencies that are out there. And if we go into a trust line, we issue the credit lines, and it has a starting balance by, for example, 0. So at that point, we didn't create any value. We just said that at any point of time, I would give you anything that you need from me, and you can pay in IOUs. This could be me being a shop. This could be me being a private person, and you either wanting to buy specific goods or services in my shop, and then I'll just give you the good and you'll give me the IOU. But it could also be you needing money in cash. You can then come to me and say, hey, please give me the money in cash. And I'll say, no problem, but you have to give me the IOU basically that covers this. The way Trustlines is designed is that, for two people, it's very easy to use because I trust you, you trust me. We can pay each other in IOUs. But what happens if I encounter somebody that I don't trust? And that's why we build a mesh network of people that you can basically pay anybody in the network as long as there is a path connecting you. So if we would now have a third person here in the room, and I would trust this person, but you would not trust that person, you could still pay that person, because you could basically say, Andreas, I'll owe you money. And I'll say, okay, I'll owe the third person money, which allows you to buy goods and services of that third person. And this scales up. And so if you have a lot of people in the same network, you basically create a mesh network. And if you have a minimum amount of people, it scales so that you can pay anybody that is within the system, because there should always be a path that connects these people with each other. Except if people want to be independent and they don't trust a lot of people, they could still have an independent group with each other.
And how that's super interesting. So how is it decided, or how is the what would you call that, like collateral or the trust distributed? Is it, it's simple. If there's a person in the room that that I don't, you would carry 100% of the trust, I'd presume, if he disappears. But in the case where we have 5 mutual connections, or 1 mutual connection is a lot stronger, is that part of the algorithm of the trust line's brain, or is there a simple way to conceptualize that?
So I hope I understand your question correctly. I'll just try to answer it. If I don't answer your question, just asking it again. So the golden rule of trust lines is that you shouldn't create a trust line with somebody that you don't trust. So you wouldn't lend money to somebody where you don't expect to get it back, right? So if I create a trust line with somebody, I assume that whatever he owes me, I will get back in some way at some point, either because I need something from him, which I could then pay, and it would just cancel out the debt that he has towards me. Or I could go to him and tell him, hey, you've been owing me like 50 euros for like 3 years. I need it in cash. Please give it to me. Yeah. So if you then pay somebody that you don't trust, it would always go through the path of connected trust lines, which means that you would never lend money in that path to somebody that you don't trust. or vice versa. Yeah? So there doesn't need to be like a social trust graph involved, because it doesn't matter who I pay. I always pay over a person that trusts me to give him the money back. And there doesn't need to be any collateral involved. I mean, you could build some collateral in it, but it's fully, it does not depend on collateral, because it's backed by the trust.
It's backed by the trust of
Yes.
the connections that you have in between, right?
Exactly, to the people, and those are that's a social trust. This is not something that you code. Yeah? It's a social trust. I only create trust lines with people that I trust, so that if I owe them money, they can always be sure that I can give it back to them. Or if they owe me money, I know that eventually I'll get it back from them.
And would you ever create a trust line with someone you don't know, but you can trust through the network somehow? You can see effectively like their score or some sort of quantitative?
No, there's no scoring system, because we really say you should create trust lines with people that you trust. With this said, Trustlines is an open source protocol. It's a community-driven project. You can build these kinds of services on top of Trustlines. Yeah, this is just not what it currently covers. You could build a social trust graph, and trust is not only I trust you. It could be also backed by like a contract with somebody. So you could have a specific company coming into like that's what I mean with like truly inclusive. It does not dictate people not being able to enter the system. So banks in theory could also enter the systems, or services that are similar to a bank, and they could cover trust in a different way. They could have, contracts in place. They could have some other agreement in place where they know that, the debt that they create and the credit that they give out is covered by some trustworthiness. And that's the same assumption with the banknotes that you have in your wallet. That's covered by trust, and it's not covered by anything else. It's covered in trust to any state that issues these banknotes, that the state guarantees that you get a service. We have trust towards our banks. The trust is not like I have trust with my family or my friends, but it's the trust that the legal framework will guarantee that I will get my money back from that bank if I want to have it back.
How do you think, just out of curiosity, have you ever seen a reliable, because trust is kind of a subjective thing, right? If
Absolutely.
I could say I trust the educational system, or I trust the banking system, or my political system, and we can kind of feel it, you're aware of the criticism or the overt corruption in some cases, and that deteriorates the trust that's implicitly known by a group of people. And then the other scenario where you and me, or me and my brother, there's different trusts that I feel that no one else can tell me about. It's like I know this because I can just feel it. So aside from the individual subjective emotional side of trust between an individual, have you seen a way, or is there even a project, or does this even make sense to say that trust can be quantified in some way that is bigger than just one individual connecting to another? Like, can we, and I don't know if this is like scraping polls or polling people, or if there's something I'm completely not thinking about, but trust is so important in society, and we can feel it, we're aware of it, but how do we turn it into a language that a computer can interpret? Or does that not even make sense to think of it that way?
That's a good question. It connects kind of with like these social graphs that you build. I don't know. I would say like that could be good, but it could also be really, really bad, because that's like very transparent. I think like if you look at what's happening in China, they have like this social scoring of people.
Yeah.
And that's like scary. Like I don't want to be in a system like that. And
there was a Black Mirror episode that had this, where everyone had a trust score.
Yeah, like I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But I feel comfortable, I behave in a specific way in my surrounding that results in the people in my surrounding to either trust me or not trust me. Yeah. And that I'm happy with. I'm happy with sharing the information to the people that I know about me that either increases the trust that they have towards me or decreases it in some way.
I wonder if it's almost inevitable, though, that it arises, almost like it's part of the advancement of the engine of society, where we now have social media, and you could argue that social media is a proxy for trust, where if you have a lot of connections in common, you have a lot of likes or followers, I'm going to trust you more because I've assumed that you've done good by the people who follow you. And if you don't, then I can go out publicly and bash you. Where if you're not on social media, then I just can't. I have less to go by to trust you. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know if that is relevant or in any way. Some people are thinking about building on top of trust lines for this, but it's kind of interesting.
I would definitely support any project that wants to build these kinds of projects onto trust lines, as long as it goes towards the same vision of like addressing the unbanked and underbanked people. Yeah? Like that's the core idea. Like we want to really create a vehicle that allows anybody in the world to be part of the financial system, either as an alternative, and building a better financial system by using trust lines.
And tell me where you guys are now in terms of how you measure progress of the network, whether it's individuals who are making transactions or the volume of transactions, or anything else you think of.
Yeah. So like in terms of project progress, we've been like running our own side chain to Ethereum since 2019. I hope that 2019, and we have like, I would say like something between 5,000 and 10,000 app downloads. So the way you can interact with Trustlines is through a mobile application that was developed, and it basically has access to more than 40 different currencies that are deployed on the Trustlines blockchain, and people can create the trust lines between the people that they trust by just using the phone, sending an invite link, scanning QR code. They can set the credit limits themselves, and they can close the trust lines whenever they want to. We really built the system in a way that we don't have any hands on what has been deployed, so that it can be really like, we don't want to be in a position where we're like, we can shut something down. That's not what we want to build. We don't want to build a system that we shut down or can shut down. We want to build a system that is independent also, by us, that has been spending time and money developing the protocol and anything that is around it. We have had 3 validator auctions. The concept of the Trustlines blockchains is a minimal viable proof of stake. So we basically combined the concept of having a proof of authority consensus algorithm, where you have a known set of validators, and combine that with a staking model on the Ethereum chain itself, because we said we don't want to have known authorities running the Trustlines blockchain, because then again, people could come to us, say, give us the addresses of these people. We want to sue them because what you're doing is illegal in the country. We can provide that information because we don't have it. And the proof of stake just guarantees that people have to stake something and can lose something if they do something bad on the Trustlines blockchain. And what we do to basically get the closed circle of validators is we run a proof of sociality within Twitter, where people can send us their email addresses, and then we run a script that basically checks if they are within the trusted graph that we determined, which has more than 2 people in it. And that's why we can guarantee that one validator is one person, and not one person being able to run multiple validators. Because in a small blockchain, that's one of the biggest problems. If you have one person running multiple validator nodes, they could then also, do certain things that you don't want them to do. And it just limits the attack vector. In terms of progress of the financial inclusion of the unbanked and underbanked, we're still in the starting phase. We have some pilot projects. We have a pilot project in Africa. We have a pilot project in Venezuela where we are basically testing the ground currently. If Trustlines is interesting for them, if Trustlines has a value proposition, and if Trustlines results in the empowerment of providing financial inclusion to these people, basically just to do a sanity check if what we have built actually has a value for them. We have one a pilot project in Germany, and we are inviting anybody out there to contact us to start more pilot projects, because that's one of the most important things that we currently can do, is to scale up the pilot projects that we're doing, to just get the feedback from the people and see what is missing, what did we do wrong, is this really helpful for you? And this is especially very, very important for us to understand, because like the idea that we have is that there are a lot of countries out there that don't have access to the financial system, but they have some value, like a community in Africa. Just because they don't have access to money does not mean that they're not able, to interact and to do payments. They find a way, and we want to, give them trust lines so that they can do it in a better way. Because at some point of time, they still have a trust relationship in that community with each other, so they can pay with value that is, generated by the trust that they have with each other. And that's what we want them to use trust lines for.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you would agree with the analogy of social currency is kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I'm picturing, like, if you have a group of people that is, say you have a small group of people living alone, say in a jungle. If you have 50 people, you kind of have this implicit trust, this implicit social currency, where it's like, okay, if I do your laundry, well, I guess in the jungle they're not doing laundry, but if I'm giving you a piece of meat today, then I expect that in return tomorrow. And you hear people say, I owe you a favor.
Exactly.
It seems like it would be a function of the number of people in the city. So if it's, or in the network rather. So if it's like, if I'm in a small tribe of 50 people, I probably wouldn't need trust lines because I can keep track of it in my head. But when I get into a city of like thousands of people, or people that I've just met or I'm just interacting with, then it makes sense to have that on a publicly viewable blockchain.
Yeah,
right? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, like I always say that the value of trust lines already occurs if you have just two people. Just like two people that have a trust relationship with each other, you can already use trust lines for that.
But tell me for a second. So if you and I wanted to, there's probably some dollar amount that matters. Say I give you $50,000, a sizable amount. You are good. I'm going to want to. The point of me wanting to use trust lines would be so that we have a ledger that is outside of the legal contract. It's not a legal contract, but it's a publicly viewable blockchain. And so the reason for that is that if you don't pay, I'm screwed. But if you want to pay, how much you owe me. So it's a way of keeping track in good faith of the current debt or social debt.
Yes, that's what you can use trust lines. You can use trust lines just, to keep track of the debt. But the more connections you have, the more powerful the system actually gets, because it could very well be. And then, like, under that point, I agree with this. If you have a closed community, you could argue, do you need Trustline for that closed community? But within a closed community, it's actually one of the best points to use Trustline, because what they do is circular. Like, everything that they do is shaped in a circular economy style, because the value that they generate doesn't leave their community, but it stays in the community. And you'll always have a person buying a specific good from somebody that does not benefit from what you're doing. And so you couldn't go to that person and tell him, hey, I want that a piece of meat, and you'll get, I don't know, a boat from me, for example. And then the butcher would say, but I don't need a boat. I need a new axe or I need a new knife. Yeah. But then the person who bought the meat would say, I don't do that. Yeah. But it could be very well that the same person that owes you the money then, somebody else comes to that person and buys the boat, and then you basically have debt towards somebody else. And then the butcher could go to that person and say, I need the knife. And I basically then cancel out the debt that the one person has towards the butcher and the debt that the knife creator has towards the boat maker, because you'll find a path that reduces the debt in the system overall. Yeah. So you can pay people that you don't trust, but it also allows you to basically cancel out the debt in the system. And that's also like very familiar to like what you see in the traditional financial system. A lot of payments that are being done, they don't get, settled immediately. It takes 1, 2, 3 days before banks actually settle their payments in central bank money, because they know that what will happen is a lot of payments will flow from bank A to bank B, and then from bank B to bank A again. Yeah? Or if you look at stock markets, you have multilateral clearing that happens at the end of the day to just cancel out the debt positions, because you have so much entities buying stocks and selling stocks that if you look at the debt positions that they have individually with each other, you can reduce the debt that they have with each other. Yeah. And that's how Trustlines then also works. You have this clearing function in it that allows you to pay people that you trust or don't trust, and it overall reduces the imbalance that the system has.
What do you think about just kind of extrapolating on that concept? What do you think of national debt? So if I think of the United States as being in $20 trillion of debt, effectively what I'm saying is that of the 300 million people who live in the U.S., we owe 20 trillion in debt, and that's debt owed to other countries. It's also debt owed to ourselves in the future. Do you have, is there a perspective that you've gained from thinking about trust and debt in social settings where you feel either more or less confident in our current state of affairs as it pertains to national debt, or how to think about national debt? I've had some people say that, oh, we want to get to 0% national debt, or we want to get very, very low. And I just wonder, is that the goal, or how do you think about debt in very, very large groups like nations?
So, I think the traditional financial system has the problem that it generates money out of thin air, in compared to trust lines where this is not possible. Any positive balance in trust lines is reflected by a negative balance. There is not money generated out of thin air. There's no, and that's the same with like cryptocurrencies or ICO projects. They just mint tokens, and then you have to trust the token, but they can just mint more tokens or replace the token. With trust lines, you always know, if I have €5 of positive balance, somebody will have €5 negative balance. And if you look into like the debt that the individual countries are, I don't know where that debt came from. Yeah? Like, I'm not an expert on that. Yeah.
It's basically, we're borrowing from the future, right? We're saying like, hey, Andreas, you're saying to yourself, it'd be like me saying to Mike, hey, I'm going to borrow, $1,000 today, and I'm going to pay myself back in 10 years at a 10% interest or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we're really borrowing from the future, which is risky, because if you borrow too much and you don't meet your productivity goals, then we get depressed. We go into a depression, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it could also be interest. Yeah, interest is a like in trust lines you can have interest, but you don't have to have interest. Like, anybody can set the interest on a trust lines itself. But many projects that we have talked to within this like social economy, financial inclusion space, they say that interests are like a bad thing. Yeah? I don't necessarily agree. I think interests don't need to be a bad thing. They can also be a good thing, because you basically it's a risk assumption.
What's the theory that it's a bad thing, or what's the rationale that it?
Yeah, because because interest basically also, there is no, if I lend you $5, yeah, and I give you interest on it, yeah, you'll just owe me more money over time. And if you cannot pay it back at some point, you'll owe me much more money in time. Yeah, and that's to be considered a bad thing. And I'm sure if you look at the numbers, why countries owe countries that much money, you can see that a lot of that is also based on interest. If you look into like the typical banking sector, you have to pay a lot of interest on credits that you get from your bank, and you could consider that to be a bad thing, because banks make a lot of money from that.
Yeah, and relatively low right now. I think we're at least here, it's incredibly low interest rates. So you can, even the concept of a negative interest rate would, I don't know if that would ever make sense for trust lines. Probably no, that would never make sense. But the idea of I'm going to give you money, and then I'm going to give you money for taking money from me as a debt. It's
you actually have that too. You can have that. It's like demurrage currencies. Yeah, where basically the value of the currency decreases over time to encourage you to spend it. Yeah, like it motivates you. Like if I have a positive balance of 5 and the balance shrinks over time, I'm more encouraged and motivated to spend the positive balance rather than just leaving it under my pillow.
Yeah,
Because
that's the idea.
Yeah, that's the
general idea with inflation, right?
Exactly.
Is that the government issues more money, inflates the money, so that if you just keep your $1,000 underneath your pillow, you have $100 in 20 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah.
Do you think that's a problem with, say, Bitcoin, where the number of Bitcoin that I may produce is finite and slowing over time?
No, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. It could. I think Bitcoin has much other problems that all the cryptocurrency related projects have. With Bitcoin, especially, like Bitcoin as like all cryptocurrencies to be used as payment is not necessarily very good because they're very expensive. And so, like, again, the concept of any country that has problems with payment system because they don't have one, people tell them just buy cryptocurrency and you can pay, and they're like, but I don't have money to buy cryptocurrencies. Giving them the tools to generate the money is much easier than just telling them to buy cryptocurrencies. But also, if you look at all the prominent blockchains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, transaction costs are so high currently. Yeah. So high. And like, just tell a person in Africa to pay $30 to do a payment. It's not going to happen. Yeah.
No.
And that's why one of the goals that we also have for Trustlines and the Trustlines blockchain is to keep transaction costs always below 1 cent, because other than Bitcoin or Ethereum, the Trustlines blockchain is a purpose-driven blockchain. So we really want only financial inclusion projects to be on it. We don't want a Hello Kitty project or any other projects on there that do not follow the mission and the vision. With this said, we cannot stop people to do this. But common sense is just we're building this and we're trying to do this to have the goal of financial inclusion for people. So don't be mean.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
How does it, tell me a little bit about you guys. So how many people are involved in the project now? And then how does funding work both for you guys to get paid a salary, but also does that 1 cent per transaction, is that going to fund the network independently, or do you anticipate higher fees to compensate for that?
Yeah. So in general, let's start with the Trustlines token. So we also have a token, and we also have a token model. But rather than an ICO, we just gave away the token, and we didn't do an airdrop. We did what is called a Merkle drop. So the Trustlines Foundation, that is a nonprofit foundation in Liechtenstein, they created 80 million Trustlines Network tokens. And they gave away 40 million tokens to 100,000 users, basically. Yeah? And if you've been within the crypto space a long time and have been doing specific things on Ethereum, you could just go to trustlines.foundation, click on Merkle Drop, just paste your Ethereum address that you've been using or multiple Ethereum addresses and see if you're entitled to claim Trustlines tokens. Yeah? They're still there. They will be there until end of this year, and then they will be burned. And then the foundation will probably create some other token distribution models. The reason why we did this was because we didn't want to just push tokens into wallets, because for number one, that's like not the best way to do it, because you have to pay transaction costs for it. But also in some countries, you have to report what is in your wallet. And, maybe I don't want to have Trustlines tokens in my wallet because I don't want to report it. And so we said, okay, if you are interested in this project, then you can claim your tokens. The Trustlines Foundation wants to get financing over this token to the Trustlines Foundation, so that in future the Trustlines Foundation can pay projects that want to build applications around Trustlines and work on the protocol itself. Mm-hmm. We at Brainbot, since we have multiple projects, we basically work on this as like a social project, and yeah, we assume that in future there will be some way for us to be cost covering on this. Yeah? So currently it's we contribute to Trustlines, the Trustlines ecosystem, and we help the further development. And people can get involved in Trustlines. They can use Trustlines. The app itself is free to use. You can download it in the App Store, and you can download it in the iOS store. And we do not put the burden of transaction costs onto the users. So if you basically want to use the Trustlines app, you don't have to buy any cryptocurrency before that to pay for transaction costs on the Trustlines blockchain, because we have specific roles that pay for the transaction costs on the blockchain.
Got it. And how many people are working on that?
So we have about 10 people working on that, including the people that work for Brainbot, including the people that work for the Trustlines Foundation. And then we have maybe another like 5 to 10 community members, where you could argue Brainbot Technologies is also community members. But we have the pilot project in Venezuela, we have the pilot project in Africa, we have the pilot project in Germany, and those are all basically just free contributors that applied for a Trustlines grant and are receiving basically monthly grants of the Trustlines Foundation to cover costs or to just, get some economical value out of it so that they can pay their bills.
Cool. And roughly, do you know how many people are using Trustlines in terms of making
transactions?
Transactions.
Yeah. So like daily active users, I would say it's a 2-digit number. Yeah. Overall, as I mentioned, we have like between 5 and 10,000 app downloads. They're all over the world. Yeah, I cannot necessarily point to one specific location that has the most. We have mostly Europe and North America. We have some in South America too, some in Russia. And overall, I don't know. I can't put a number. Like we could like do a lot of user tracking, but we tend not to do that. You can use the Block Explorer to see how many transactions are being sent. It's nowhere near to what I would like to have it. Yeah. The problem is that Trustlines in its core is, also complicated to explain to people. If I talk to people, common questions that come are like, but where's the money? Yeah. Because they're like so mind framed into that we rely on central bank money. They don't understand necessarily that you can create your own money. And people in Europe or the States, they do this every day. Yeah? or a lot. Yeah, every time you go out and drink with your friend, and he doesn't have money, and you pay for him, you're giving him a credit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's Trustlands. You give people credit. You pay with IOUs, and the system allows you to only depend on these IOUs and not depend on any money generated by any other entity. Yeah? So it's like truly people-powered money. The people generate the money themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good description. It's a really innovative model, and I think people will get used to it, and they'll see the upside in it eventually. And I think timing is like, who knows, right? Whether it's this year, next year. I mean, overall, you're riding the huge wave of crypto, so people are going to pay attention more and more. I mean, we've seen the explosion happening and will continue to happen. And so I think once people it's like a conceptual game. You have to get people conceptually around Bitcoin and crypto. And then once that happens, they're going to go deeper into like DeFi and then new ways of compensating or paying transacting trust, which is with you guys. So I keep sticking with it, man. Even though you're not where you want to be, I think this is what every leading company now felt back in the day, right? Coinbase, when they were 10 people, they're like, man, what are we doing building crypto? Is this ever going to work? Now it's obvious. And one day, hopefully it'll be obvious for you guys to look back. So I applaud the progress you made, and I hope our listeners can download it. You're on the App Store, iOS and Google, I assume.
Yes, you can just go trustlines.app and you can directly download it.
Sweet.
We have a lot of documentations. The easiest way to I don't know, we're like on video. We can do it right now if you want to. I can guide you through the progress if you want to. Yeah, we can download the app and then I can directly show it to you. You want to do that?
Well, do you have the app on your phone? We could. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll include it in show notes as well. But if you want to just give a quick,
it's like it's just go to trustlines.app. Yeah, it's really
trustlines.app.
We shouldn't do it. The problem is I'll show you a QR code, or you'll show me your QR code, and basically anybody then who looks at the video can send you a Trustlines request. That's maybe not the most trustworthy experience.
We'll have plenty of details in the show notes.
We have video demonstrations on how you can trade at Trustlines, and it's basically like only a 4-step process. You download the app, you put in your username that you want to show to people. It's not stored on a central server. Anything that we have on the app is stored on your local phone and just gets relayed to the server, and then either to the blockchain or to the other app, and then gets deleted from our servers again. You find a trustworthy person, so it could be me, it could be somebody that you know.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part, but like everybody should have at least like one person that they trust, and can interact with. You can either send them a link via a direct message, like an onboarding link, and they click on it, and then they can set the parameters, or you can set the parameters. How much credit do you want to give? How much credit do you want to receive? You click on send, the person getting it reviews it, clicks on accept, boom, you're ready. You can do payments directly.
Trustline initiated.
Trustline initiated.
I'm stoked, man. Congrats again on all the progress. If people are interested either in collaborating or working or somehow getting involved, what's the best way people can get a hold of you?
We're on Twitter. We're on Telegram. We have multiple Twitter accounts for different purposes. We have trustlines_app. We have Trustlines Found for Trustlines Foundation. You can go to trustlines.network to be in the network page, which is currently being reshaped. So you can click on contact. You can write us an email, join the Telegram channel. That's probably the most interesting because that's where the most information comes.
Or drop by the office. And you guys are in Germany?
We're in Germany. Corona restrictions are pretty serious right now, so I wouldn't advise anybody to just pop into the office. But once everything is cleared up again, we like to tend to do a lot of meetups, go to conferences, etc. So there's plenty of opportunities to get in touch with us, and we really want people to get in touch with us. do pilot projects together with us, and just grow the network so that it gets bigger and people can pay each other without relying on any other money. Create their own money.
Cool, man. Well, I dig the innovation, and again, congrats, man. And look forward to hear how things go. So, Andreas Fletcher, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for reaching out.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.